Welcome, everyone, to the Greater Metro West Federation Security Town Hall. I am Brett Tansman, and I'm on the board of the Greater Metro West Federation and also serve as chair of its Security Advisory Council. Today, we have a great lineup of special guests from the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, professionals from our Greater Metro West security team, and the private sector. Today, we'll get briefed by the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness on the current threat landscape and also about the Bleeding Control Initiative. We will hear from our security team on best practices for grant submissions, and we will hear from Guido Tech on best practices for cybersecurity live streaming. As we know and see, the threats to our community continue to rise, and we need to remain vigilant. We are incredibly grateful for the collaboration between our team, the state, and local governments, and with other nonprofits throughout the state and region. The cooperation and collaboration is so important. With that, I want to turn it over to our Chief Security Official, Chip Michaels, who will facilitate the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it. Thank you for attending today. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded and it'll be available on our GMW CSI resource page in the next day or two. So just in case you take notes and maybe you miss something, you don't have to worry about it. You can go back and watch the whole thing again. Just a little housekeeping. If you have a question, any questions during the presentation, please submit those questions into the chat. We'll try to get to those questions at the end of the webinar. If for some reason we don't get to everyone's questions, we'll collect those questions. We'll answer them to the best of our ability, and then we'll email out the question and the chat to all the attendees that are here today. Thank you for that. So I first want to introduce the Director of Intelligence and Operation for the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, Tom Houck. Tom Houck overseeing counterterrorism and counterintelligence efforts. Prior to his current position at NJOSP, Tom retired as an assistant special agent in charge of our FBI Newark field office. He also served in the United States Marine Corps as an enlisted infantryman and intelligence officer. Tom, thank you for your service and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chip. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I'd like to thank Chip and the rest of the staff for thinking of NJOHSP and inviting us into your meeting, so thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Chip for his participation in our Interfaith Advisory Council Executive Committee. That's one of our flagship programs, and having folks like Chip on there makes that program a success, so thank you for that. I did want to give a quick update on a development from last week. There was an individual, many of you may be familiar with Jimmy Ware. He's sort of been a thorn in the side of the Jewish community with bias, intimidation, and harassment. We spoke to a number of people in the Jewish community. This surfaced during the John Page Memorial at the meeting prior to his celebration. But I'd just like to report out that we did open a case on that, investigated it. Jimmy Ware entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 364 days in prison, followed by a year of supervised release. And he will have to undergo a de-radicalization program as well. So for a guilty plea, that's a pretty good sentence at the state level. So, you know, that's a success. Today, we're going to, and Chip will introduce the presenters who I want to thank our presenters too for joining me today to help with this. But we're going to hear about sort of what happened in the past for the year of 2023. We're going to get a breakdown of our year-end review of our suspicious activity reports, focused on the faith-based community as a whole, but also broken down specifically for those related to the Jewish population. So that's what happened last year. We're also going to hear about our 2024 threat assessment. That's sort of our forecast for this year, what we see as the big threats, high, moderate, and low threats. And then, of course, as mentioned, Izzy is going to give an update on the status of the bleed control kit program that's, you know, off and running. So that's a great program. So again, thank you for having us. And Chip, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that, sir. I first want to introduce Craig Santee. He's an intelligence analyst. He's also the corrections liaison. And most importantly for us, all of us, he's the special events coordinator for the state of New Jersey. He provides support to the Interfaith Advisory Council initiative. Prior to NJOSP, Craig worked as a senior investigator for the Department of Corrections Special Investigations Division. and was a specialist in security threat groups. Craig, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I'd like to start off by talking about the 2023 year-end review for suspicious activity impacting the Jewish faith. Key findings: the number of SARS targeting Jewish facilities and communities nearly doubled in 2023 as opposed to 2022. This can be attributed to increased vigilance in reporting suspicious incidents, particularly during the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The counties with the most reported SARS are as follows: Middlesex, Ocean, Bergen, and Essex. This is due to a large Jewish population in these counties, as well as the presence of colleges and universities, which saw increasing activity due to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The most common types of incidents that were reported were express threat, implied threat, sabotage, tampering, vandalism, and photographing and videotaping. Notable incidents impacting the Jewish faith include in January 2023 in Essex County, an unidentified subject threw an incendiary device at a temple building. The device, a glass bottle with a flaming wick protruding from it, was thrown by the suspect, but it did not penetrate or ignite the building. When the glass bottle broke prior to contacting the building, the contained liquid spilled on the ground and self-extinguished. Also, there was an incident in June 2023 in Ocean County. A subject set fire to a residence and spray painted approximately 18 residences in Manchester, with authorities identifying swastikas among the graffiti. As far as the first quarter of 2024 for Jewish faith-based incidents, the number of SARS impacting the Jewish community for Q1 has remained fairly consistent with the Q1 for 2023. Bergen County has reported the most SARS impacting the Jewish community so far in Q1, followed by Essex County. Majority of the incidents were express or implied threat in Q1 for 2024. That's all I have.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to Christine Franchi. Am I pronouncing that right, Christine? Christine Franchi is an intelligence analyst, and she's responsible for conducting intelligence analysis on terrorist threats to the state of New Jersey, as well as providing intelligence support to cases pursued by the Operations Bureau. Prior to joining OHSP, Christine worked as a crime analyst at the Eversham Township Police Department, where she collected, analyzed, and disseminated statistical data regarding crime patterns and trends. Good morning, Christine, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Christine Franchi, analyst with OHSP. My specialty more so is the domestic terrorism, specifically the racially motivated extremist. So today I'm going to share with you guys, like we talked about, a highlight from our 2024 threat assessment. So I'm going to put that on the screen right now. And just give me 1 minute. Okay. Okay, is everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so for our 2024 New Jersey Terrorism Threat Assessment, we're just going to kind of go over some of our rankings, high threats, domestic terrorism, foreign terrorist organizations, a little bit about social media, counterintelligence, and cybersecurity threats. So this slide over here, every year we do our annual threat assessment, which is on their website to see everything in full detail. But for this over here, this is highlighting our 2024 current threat rankings. So we're looking at the past 5 years and focusing on 3 criteria with this: intent, capability, and presence. So do they intend to attack New Jersey? Do they have the capabilities to conduct an attack? And do they have a presence within the state as well? So we need to understand how these threats evolve over the years. So currently still for the high threat category, we have homegrown violent extremists and white racially motivated extremists. In our moderate threat group, we have a lot of other DT extremist groups as well. And you see in the low threat category, it's mostly foreign terrorist organizations. But we want to emphasize here, though, that low threat does not mean no threat. So vigilance is obviously still recommended. So we have further information on our terrorism snapshots that are on the webpage if you want to like kind of delve into these a little bit further here. So let's start out with our homegrown violent extremists here. So just a little reminder that An homegrown violent extremist is an individual that's inspired, as opposed to directed, by foreign terrorist organizations, and they're radicalized in the countries in which they are born, raised, or reside. So regarding these HVEs, we see that they consistently show a propensity to commit violence and provide material support to foreign terrorist organizations. So over the last 5 years, we've had 37% of our HVE attacks and plots that occurred in New Jersey and in surrounding states, further highlighting this threat to the region. 2 incidents of note. Back in December of 2022, there was a Maine resident who traveled to New York City to attack 3 police officers with a machete during a New Year's Eve celebration. Then back in November 2022, a Sayreville, New Jersey resident had threatened to attack a synagogue. And also, furthermore, when considering Israel and the Hamas conflict, we consider the threat from Hamas to New Jersey as low. The concern is for homegrown violent extremists to find inspiration and commit violence in support of Hamas. So one of the examples we have here to highlight was back in December. This individual was inspired by Hamas. Authorities arrested Kareem Nasir of Lawrenceville in Mercer County in Kenya after he was attempting to join al-Shabaab in Somalia. So in this chart over here, just shows you our identified HVEs by year. Consistently, it has been down since 2019. So we're at 11 for last year. This I'm not going to go into full detail here. We just want to highlight some regional arrests. There's been varying types of subjects that either conducted an attack, were providing material support, or were attempting to travel overseas. So we had 2 New York arrests consisting of Victoria Jacobs, who was providing material support to an al-Qaeda affiliate, Rita Nkola, who was posting online threats to kill law enforcement. Then there was 2 Philadelphia arrests. There was Kamal Fatalev, who was posting weapons manuals online, and an unnamed juvenile that was constructing multiple explosives and stockpiling weapons in support of a Syrian-based al-Qaeda affiliate. And the other one was Kareem Nasir, who I spoke about in the previous slide. Now, we're going to dive into our next threat category with high threats of white racially motivated extremists. These are individuals who believe in advancing the white race over all others, and they'll use violence and criminal activity to further their ideology. So they will remain a high threat in 2024, and we'll likely see them continue to attack soft targets due to their high casualty potential, write and post a lot of hateful rhetoric online, and share a lot of their motivations with like-minded individuals and threaten their enemies. So within the past 5 years, these extremists have conducted attacks resulting in the highest number of fatalities at soft target locations, with 51 individuals killed and approximately 53 injured. So these 2 individuals I want to highlight: Mauricio Garcia. He had opened fire at an outlet mall in Texas, killing 8 individuals and wounding 7 others. He was espousing anti-Semitism and support for neo-Nazi ideology online. He was sharing images of his firearms and images of the outlet mall, which you can see on the slide over here. They found over 100 pages of a written diary detailing his hatred towards several races that was uploaded to a Russian social media site. You had Ryan Palmetter, who had fatally shot 3 Black individuals and then himself at a retail store in Florida. He had left behind a suicide note, a will, and multiple manifestos that contained a lot of racially motivated extremist content. Some of the material that they found within his residence showed that he was trying to target Black individuals. And actually, just prior to the attack, he was filming himself in a tactical vest and gloves, and he was at a historically Black university, and a security guard actually alerted a nearby police officer. Then with the other 2 individuals, Richard Golden, who was actually a New Jersey resident, and Joshua Wall, they were arrested for posting threatening messages online targeting a Florida county sheriff who was denouncing a racially motivated extremist group that was in one of the Jewish communities down there. So both of them were using chat rooms that was notorious for extremist content as well. Now, just to go over a little bit of a domestic terrorism overview, we saw domestic extremists attack soft targets. They were threatening Jewish communities, and they were coordinating with other like-minded extremists to intimidate their enemies. So as you can see here with the chart, we had 27 actual incidents that took place, but there were a couple people that were working in coordination with each other. So among those 33 people that were identified, 28 were arrested, 2 took their own lives, and 3 engaged in a fatal confrontation with law enforcement. So we've seen different attacks of white racially motivated extremists that were conducting 2 separate fatal shootings, using incendiary devices to target houses of worship, an abortion-related extremist that was using an incendiary device to damage an abortion provider, And like I said before, 1/3 of all the arrested extremists were coordinating with another subject to intimidate their perceived enemies. So now this, I'm just gonna cover some of the highlights with our attack timeline. These are just meant to highlight the various attacks that we've identified to illustrate the subject's various ideologies, types of attacks, and victims. So we had a sovereign citizen individual shoot at police officers after refusing to obey an order to move his vehicle, an abortion-related extremist that was using an incendiary device to damage an abortion clinic. The one I want to highlight here is Nicholas Mucci. This was a New Jersey incident. He was a white racially motivated extremist that was attacking attendees at an anti-racism concert in Asbury Park. He was attempting to block the concert goers from leaving the event, throwing multiple smoke bombs off towards the church before driving off. Then we had another incident with a racially motivated extremist using a Molotov cocktail to try and burn down a church. And then 2 anarchist extremists that were using homemade smoke bombs and fireworks to attack law enforcement and a crowd that was waiting to enter this event in Pittsburgh. This I already covered with Mauricio Garcia. Then you had a sovereign citizen shooting at sheriff deputies while they were attempting to serve him an eviction notice at a house that he was squatting in. Ryan Palmetter, who I covered. And the last one here was Benjamin Jones, who shot and injured 4 individuals at a retail store. So the investigation was remaining ongoing because the motive appeared to be partially motivated by racially motivated extremist ideology. So they were continuing to kind of look at the background and motives and connections and online activity for that case. So now with this over here, when we're looking at the threat from domestic extremists, we also see how subjects with varying ideologies will either participate in counter-protest demonstrations, doxing campaigns, and vandalize public and private property. So we want to highlight this too, because it's not just these extremists conducting lethal attacks. They are committing different things, and there's tactics that they're utilizing. So just to provide a little context, back in October, there was approximately 25 members of the National Socialist Club, which is a New England-based neo-Nazi group that was demonstrating outside of the Massachusetts governor's home to protest immigration. You had back in May, authorities arrested a couple anarchist extremists with harassment and misdemeanor. They were stalking an Atlanta police officer. They were distributing flyers that contained the officer's personal information, residential address, and some other information on that as well. And then since 2022, we've seen a lot of abortion-related extremists have been vandalizing abortion clinics, pregnancy centers, and religious institutions as well. So back in June, 3 suspects had firebombed a California abortion clinic back in March that was recently charged. So this over here with domestic extremists, we see how they exploit the ease of constructing homemade weapons. So we've seen abortion-related extremists constructing various incendiary devices and Molotov cocktails. Anarchist extremists using homemade smoke bombs and fireworks. In February, you had an anti-government extremist that was in possession of several pounds of a binary explosive and material used to construct IEDs. You had a sovereign citizen who was leading police on a car chase, and they found that he had several ghost guns that he had created that were in his possession in the vehicle. And then using Molotov cocktails to attack a church. So this just tries to show the ease of different various weapons that these domestic extremists use and how easily they have been able to make use of them. With this slide here now, because we are in election year, we wanted to identify the intent of different domestic extremists to exploit the 2024 presidential election. So we've wanted to convey that primarily anarchist, anti-government, and racially motivated extremists will exploit the presidential election to amplify hostility either towards social and economic policies, immigration, and ethnic and religious minorities as well. So we've seen the reversion to elections and democracy while embracing the term of accelerationism, which just means accelerate the collapse of society. A lot of these extremist groups adhere to that concept, and usually when we have people that commit attacks, it's those who embrace the whole accelerationism mindset. They want to start over, start fresh. They see government and society kind of as a failure. So we see a lot adhering to this proponent here. So we'll see that they will try to plot violent counter-protest demonstrations, threaten government officials, and also target critical infrastructure to include soft targets. So a lot of times we'll see a lot of these extremists, that'll use online platforms to spread disinformation, alter online propaganda. We might see some of these extremist groups kind of having similar grievances. Either those who perceive as supporting law enforcement or border security in Israel. So needless to say, it might be quite an interesting year ahead. Now, just to shift gears a little bit to some foreign terrorist organizations here, In 2024, Al-Qaeda continues to promote its alleged network of global members and spotlight the successes of its affiliates to emphasize their commitment. So back in 2021, the U.S. Department of State report indicated that affiliates are engaged in frequent skirmishes in conflict zones throughout Somalia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia. So back in September, Al-Qaeda published the 11th issue of its Arabic edition of One Ummah magazine, claiming that it has supporters and personnel that are all over the world. And then back in June, Al-Qaeda criticized what they consider anti-Muslim activities, and in February expressed support and more praise for its African affiliates. So just a little bit about the status here. Despite no formal announcement of a new leader, a UN report back in February of 2023 identified their new de facto leader as Saif al-Adel, who's on the screen here, because back in 2022, the US had killed the former AQ leader, Ayman Zawahiri, in Afghanistan. So with ISIS will continue to focus on their affiliates' regional operations, and they highlighted successes to re-energize their supporters. So a lot of times you see that they have been motivating homegrown violent extremists to conduct attacks. So ISIS has inspired 8 of the 11 HVEs that were arrested back in 2023. And in the last 5 years, they inspired HVEs constituted 76% of all of the arrests. So just recently in the news too, I'm sure you've heard back in March that ISIS claimed responsibility for an attack at a concert venue in Moscow that killed at least 143 people and injured more than 100. So when they detained some of the individuals, they said that they were allegedly affiliated with ISIS-K, the ISIS Khorasan. So according to a report, the group is still very active in the Sahel and West Africa, and their Al-Naba newsletter continues to churn out a lot of propaganda that's supporting members and celebrating fatal attacks that have been happening in Europe. So now shifting a little bit to social media, when we're examining social media usage by extremists, when evaluating 27 different domestic extremist attacks, plots, and threats, we found that 13 of those incidents had some type of social media nexus. So among the HVE incidents, we found that all of the subjects had some type of social media connection. So as you can see on the screen here, when dissecting the different platform breakdown, domestic extremists were predominantly operating on mainstream platforms, whereas HVEs were utilizing a lot of encrypted messaging type of platforms as well. And this over here, so domestic extremists have discussed utilizing their ideologies, posting threats. It accounted for 43% of their online activity. So smaller percentages had used these platforms to view propaganda and plan out attacks. So HVEs were using social media platforms to provide material support to foreign terrorist organizations, accounting for 33% of their usage. And smaller percentages had used these platforms to discuss ideology and post threats. So these two examples over here, Sean Patia of Michigan, he had pled guilty for making violent threats online. He was using Instagram, Discord, and Pinterest to plan acts of violence. He was sharing neo-Nazi and anti-Semitic sentiments and celebrating mass shooters. And then with Kamal Fataliv, he was lying to federal agents about his contact with ISIS sympathizers. So he was using unidentified online chat platforms to upload more than 200 bomb, poison, and firearm making guides to terror-related chat groups. And then with infrastructure in relation to that, we've seen how domestic extremists have utilized social media in obtaining guidance on their different target selections. So between 2020 and 2023, there were 56 attacks, plots, and threats to critical infrastructure. In 29 of those cases, domestic extremists were using social media in their pre-operational activities. So in March, you had an eco-fascist and a white racially motivated extremist channel that were sharing propaganda, describing vulnerabilities across energy, communications, and different cyber infrastructure. And then in August, you had someone on alternative social media platforms that was suggesting attacking individuals who work for specific critical infrastructure sectors, such as journalists and academics. Just highlighting briefly on counterintelligence, those activities involve protecting classified information, preventing espionage, and safeguarding critical infrastructure from foreign adversaries. So this can include neutralizing all aspects of intel operations of foreign nations. So here at OHSP, we aim to educate state and local employees in order to detect, deter, and disrupt foreign adversaries. This over here, Different operations range from traditional espionage activities such as human intelligence gathering to more specific, sophisticated cyber operations targeting government agencies, critical infrastructures, and corporate entities. So we focus primarily on these three tiers that you see on the screen, tier 1 being China and Russia, tier 2, Iran, Cuba, and North Korea, and then within tier 3, Pakistan, Egypt, and Israel that we maintain bilateral relationships with. Okay, and as a reminder, we always convey that members of the public are the first line of defense. Therefore, it's always critical to report any suspicious activity or potential insider threats. So consequences of these insider threats can include financial loss, damage to reputation, comprise competitive advantage, endangering lives, and compromising national security. So understanding this gravity of insider threats, it helps protect organizational assets and safeguards overall economic and societal well-being of nations alike. And then lastly, regarding this, there's transnational repression by foreign adversaries to target perceived enemies. So this can include political opponents, dissidents, journalists. On the screen here, you'll see how this can include stalking, harassment, hacking, and these different methods as well. And for some context, federal authorities back in November charged an Indian national in a murder for hire plot to assassinate an attorney and political activist who was a U.S. citizen of Indian origin that was residing in New York City. In April, you had federal authorities charging 2 defendants for operating an illegal Chinese police station in New York City. And back in January 2023, when they unsealed murder for hire and money laundering charges against 3 members of an Eastern European criminal organization for plotting to murder a U.S. citizen. And just quickly here with cybersecurity threats, obviously not everything is a physical attack. We do have a lot of this in the cyber realm as well regarding threats. So we've seen a lot of times how public and private institutions, critical infrastructure sectors and assets, and different residents will continue to face an array of cyber attacks. So obviously this can have a big impact on public health, the welfare and safety of our residents, economy, and national security. And just some key points, New Jersey obviously faces an evolving cybersecurity threat landscape. We have different threats from nation-state threat actors, cyber crime syndicates, hacktivists, and others with diverse motivations and technical capabilities. So we have a lot of robust security measures in place, proactive threat mitigation, geopolitical unrest will influence a lot of the cyber threat landscape. And also just to be cognizant that advancing technologies and AI requires innovation in a lot of cybersecurity practices. And to delve a little bit more, our New Jersey KIC has a lot more in-depth information regarding cybersecurity threats and how to be a part of that and keep on the know here. And then lastly, just to kind of finish it out, our See Something, Say Something campaign about reporting any terrorism-related suspicious activity, our NJ SARS system sharing terrorism-related information to law enforcement partners and public-private sectors throughout the state. You know, we want to emphasize a lot of our information sharing with each other relating to terrorism, targeted violence, and other criminal activity as well. So we are linked to the FBI's National Suspicious Activity Reporting System as well here. So just wanted to emphasize this campaign. And this is just a little bit about how to connect with us further. And just to kind of finish it out, if you want to read our full threat assessment in depth, it is on our website at njohsp.gov, and it'll go into a lot further information than kind of what I covered today here. And that is all I have.
Christine, thank you so much. And have a drink of water because that was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, all that information that Christina highlighted, I'm going to send that out, all the resources that Homeland has available to all of us. We're going to send that out as one email in the next day or two, so it'll be easier for you to access. Director Howe, can I put you on the spot for a second, sir, if you don't mind?
Of course.
Would you mind kind of just walking us through the importance of, you know, the See Something, Say Something program? You know, can you kind of walk us through the importance of reporting those little details that at the time may not seem significant to us, but how that little piece kind of funnels down to you and how you and your team kind of put those together to form a bigger picture?
Sure. So for those that aren't aware, you know, the AG mandates that law enforcement within New Jersey, they have to report suspicious activity into our New Jersey suspicious activity reporting system immediately. So there's a number of things that we've designated as suspicious activity. And something to keep in mind, our suspicious activity reporting, our See Something, Say Something, It's not based on color, religion, sexual orientation. It's all based on behavior and suspicious activity. But law enforcement has to report that immediately. The challenge is getting the public to get behind this program as well, which throughout the state, it's pretty good. But the importance of it is people in their own spaces, whether it's their house of worship, their school, their neighborhood, they know what the baseline is and what the norms are. So in addition to that whole list of things we've designated as suspicious activity, one we don't want to overlook is, in your community, your space, what's normal and what's not. So the public is really, in many cases, the first line of defense. And Chip is exactly right. What happens is something might seem insignificant to one person, and then another thing happens somewhere else in the state that seems insignificant to them. But as we collect this and our analysis teams put all this together, we start to build a bigger picture where we can now try to intervene or prevent something bad from happening. So, I mentioned this Jimmy Ware case. When one of those reports came in, we looked at our holdings and we saw this was not just one isolated incident. This was a problem that was recurring. So those little pieces do matter. Like I said, the big picture is what we're trying to put together. And the goal is to prevent something bad from happening. So can't stress enough to report things. If there's nothing there, it's no harm, no foul. Nothing happens to anybody. We're going to just do our due diligence to see, is there a potential problem here or not? So Chip is exactly right. We really rely on the public to a great deal to do our job effectively, which is to, prevent. Really, prevention is what we're happening. We're going to talk about the bleed kits. That's just adding another layer, but the bleed kits are about, we failed to prevent. What can we do now to minimize the damage of that failed prevention? But I think everyone would agree, best case scenario is we stop something bad from happening before it happens. And the NJ SARS and the see something, say something is really the backbone to us achieving that.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for that clarity. Appreciate it, sir.
You're welcome.
I'd like to move on to Detective Izzy Chowdhury. Izzy Chowdhury is a detective in New Jersey, Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness with almost 18 years of experience. He also serves as a college and university public safety association liaison. He's an NYPD Intelligence Bureau liaison, vice crimes officer, statewide coordinator for the Interfaith Outreach and Interfaith Advisory Council. Izzy graduated from Rutgers University with a bachelor's degree in political science and history and is pursuing a master's degree in administration and national security at the American Military University. Izzy served in the United States Air Force as an enlisted member and in the intelligence officer and is fluent in Urdu, Punjabi, and Hindi. Detective Chowdhury is also an instructor of Understanding Islam, Counterterrorism Level 1, and Understanding Sikhism. I'm also proud to say that I count Izzy as a close personal friend. Izzy, welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
Chip, always a pleasure. Definitely really great friends, and just having you as a great partner in the Interfaith Advisory Council, particularly the executive committee that Director Houck had mentioned earlier. So
Izzy,
again,
I need you to start your video, please.
Sure. How's that? Not working.
No.
So that being said, like earlier mentioned, we have the Interfaith Advisory Council was established back in 2012 with a handful of folks. Since 2018, we have had about 250 members, and as of now, we have a little bit over 5,000 members. And the purpose of the Interfaith Advisory Council is to provide a threat landscape of something like that Christina did just recently, and some of the other resources that we have for the faith community. That being said, and I'm sure you guys are well aware of the grants, we have the FEMA NSGP, which will be opening up very soon, hopefully. And then we have the state grant, which opens up sometime in the fall. In addition to that, we have the site assessments. I know Chip is very, very involved within the Metro West area that he covers. So he could definitely point you in the right direction with that and get that set up. But I really wanted to talk about two particular initiatives that we have launched. The first one is the S721 law that was passed last year and signed by Governor Murphy. which requires movie theaters as well as stadiums of 5,000 or more. But in particular, in this case, houses of worship with a capacity of 500 or more to have an emergency operation plan. That being said, we have templates that can assist in putting those emergency operation plans together. Our office has it. And then the Urban Area Security Initiative also did a great template as well. Chip has that information. That will be part of some of the stuff that he's going to put out there after this call as resources. Very easy to follow that guide. But we have over the last year teamed up with FEMA, so Federal Emergency Management Agency, to do EOP workshops, and we've done them throughout the state, and we're going to continue to do that this year. With that, we've trained over 1,500 faith-based congregants to actually write an emergency operation plan. But we'll have some of those available in the next few months for those who want to attend that. In addition to that, we do a lot of other training as well, including active shooter training. We do have one coming up in your area in Union County and Kane University on April 25th. That's in coordination with Congressman Donald Payne's office, where we provide a good hour, 15-hour, 20-minute active shooter, really focused on the faith-based community, so houses of worship in particular. But the real initiative that I did want to talk about is that Stop the Bleed that Director Houck had mentioned earlier.
Izzy, Izzy, your camera's still off, sir.
Yeah, it's not working. I'm not
acting up. Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that. I did turn it on. But anyway, the Stop the Bleed initiative is a program that we started last year. Like Director Houck had mentioned, we have a lot of mechanisms in place in preventing. So one of our biggest parts of our mission is preventing a terrorism act from happening. And this is where that SARS program comes in handy. A lot of the training, understanding the threat landscape. But, when there is an incident, what do? Right? A lot of the issue, particularly with the active shooter, is that most people actually die from bleeding out. So last year, we were able to grant funding, procure about $400,000 to launch this initiative. With that, we were able to acquire about 7,200 Stop the Bleed kits. They run about $55 a piece. And the purpose was to get these Stop the Bleed kits out to houses of worship, just in case, like Director Houck had mentioned, if something does happen, it buys enough time where first responders can come and provide that medical assistance needed to prevent people from dying. We did launch that a couple of weeks ago. We did our first training program up in a boudoir in Oakland, which went really well. And working with our partners throughout the state, so the Urban Area Security Initiative, Robert Wood Medical School, University Hospital, along with the Emergency EMS Task Force. We have trainers that will go out and train. So part of not just handing out the Stop the Bleed kit, training is a very, very integral part in understanding what you have in these training kits and how to use them. So what's actually in the training kits is a tourniquet, chest cover, gauze, gloves, really just a kit that will initially help with that Stop the Bleed. That being said, we are also working with my friend Chip Michaels within Metro West. Last week I did deliver some Stop the Bleed kits. So Chip, luckily for you guys, is actually a certified Stop the Bleed trainer. And he will be putting programs together for that training and providing that within Metro West AOR to the community. So that being said, that's what I have regarding the two initiatives that we have really currently going now. Thanks, Chip.
Thank you, Izzy. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for your time. I'd like to move on to Dorit Zimmerman. If anyone that doesn't know Dorit is a member of our GMW Community Security Initiative team here. Dorit has previously worked in the counterterrorism and security sectors of government agencies within the UK, including decontamination strategies for chemical attacks for Public Health England and counterterrorism communication plans and strategies for the City of Westminster. Dorit has 3 master's degrees: terrorism, security studies, and forensic psychology. She's an underachiever, and she's by far one of the brightest people on our team. We're really, really lucky to have her. Dorit, thank you and good morning.
Hi, Chip. You're too kind. It's actually two masters. Terrorism and security is one, and then forensic psychology. But I'll take the three. That's all good. Thank you all for having me. I'm just going to set up my. Hold on one sec. Share my screen to set up my presentation. Has that all come through? Yeah, there we are.
Yes.
Fantastic. Get myself organized, and then we can go. Wonderful. So thank you all for having me. I'm just going to really quickly go through some security grant information and best practices. Moving. Wonderful. So the federal government is offering up to $150,000 for this nonprofit security grant program, or NSGP, which can be spent on certain types of physical target hardening, security personnel, training exercises, and management and administration costs. To apply for this grant, you will need a vulnerability risk assessment and investment justification form, which I will go into in a bit. You'll also need a 501c3 letter, which is a tax exemption letter proving you are a nonprofit, as well as a unique entity identifier, which is a number assigned to an organization by the System for Award Management. If you win this grant, you cannot receive these funds without this number. So if you have not got one yet, please go onto sam.gov and apply for one ASAP. Please be aware, this is also a reimbursement grant. If your organization is successful, you will have to advance funds for items and services purchased and then submit proof of installation or execution and payment. So this vulnerability risk assessment, or VRA, is a written assessment used to identify and validate physical security deficiencies of your organization, and it is the foundation of your grant application. So everything you ask for in your application will come from the security gaps identified in this document. And it is imperative that you do not apply for something that is not in your VRA. If you're planning to go beyond physical target hardening projects and want to ask for security personnel or training, etc., these should also be in your VRA. Now, a VRA cannot be older than 36 months when you apply. Even if nothing has changed in years, you should still get someone to come assess and give you a current document. Also, it is best practice to have these updated once you do make security advances, as you shouldn't apply for another grant using a document that shows gaps that have already been mitigated. VRAs can be completed by professionals from your local prosecutor's office, police, private consultancy, or you can do a self-assessment. But these are often not looked upon favorably due to a bias that can occur. As such, if you do complete a self-assessment, try and have it countersigned by an external security professional or law enforcement. So now your IJ, your investment justification form. This is the application for the grant. And please make sure you fill out the form from the current year. They all look the same, but it's really important that it's from the current year. This form will ask you to talk about the risks and threats that affects your facility, as well as a budget narrative and breakdown and timelines of projects. Please make sure that these are all answered realistically with reasonable and logical goals, especially when looking at things like milestones and project management. This is a 3-year grant. You'll most likely need the entire 3 years to complete it effectively, and your answers need to show that you have thought and planned it appropriately, or you won't score well. This is also a grant for organizations who are at risk of terrorism. So make sure this threat is incorporated in your answers. Scores are tallied by section, so answer each question fully, even if you feel like you're repeating yourself, which you may be. But please don't think that just because you have mentioned something in a previous section, it will be counted in a following section, because it won't. In the same vein, don't leave anything blank because your application will be deemed null and void. Now, there are a few sections in the IJ that are sometimes a bit contentious, so I'll just go through some of the ones that seem to be most troublesome. In the background section, it asks to describe the location symbolic or your location symbolic value. Okay, this basically means to give a description of anything on your building or in your grounds that screams out you're a Jewish organization, like a large sign on the roadway with Hebrew writing and a Star of David or an Israeli flag, etc. Ultimately, you need to show how your building can be a target based on its ideology and how easy it is for someone to acknowledge what your building represents. Secondly, to describe the organization's role with broader state and local preparedness efforts. Okay, this is incredibly important. The government wants to know that your relationship with them is symbiotic. If they are giving you money to improve your security, they want to know that you too are helping your local emergency services with security and safety issues. So for example, things like allowing your local law enforcement to use your grounds to practice drills or to use your facility as a command center during an emergency should be detailed. If you have not done anything like this, or you don't have this kind of relationship with your local emergency services, please call them up and offer it. There needs to be coordination with these services, and this is a requirement for this grant. Moving on to the risk section, you will need to list any events that have taken place that has been a threat to your organization, preferably within like the extremist anti-Semitic realm. It is vitally important that you talk about your facility and not about you as a people. Please don't say something like Jewish people have encountered persecution for thousands of years and that's why there is a threat, but rather describe events where your organization has been physically targeted. If, please God, your organization has not encountered any threats, or move on to any hate crimes that have occurred to facilities like yours on your street or neighborhood, and move outward to your county or state, etc. This is why it is so important to record and report any incidents, as police reports and insurance claims can be put in here to increase and will increase your validity and credibility. As mentioned, there are other things you can receive funding for over and above physical target hardening projects, one of them being the hiring of security personnel. But there are some caveats that you need to think about when doing this. For starters, funds can only be used for additional security personnel and not for anyone already on your staff. And you must be able to prove that once these funds run out, you will still be able to sustain this additional security personnel initiative. Now, you can also have funding for management and administration, which is a good idea if you don't have the manpower to carry out these projects by yourself. And then funding for training, exercising, and planning. I mean, I want to start by saying that your Federation CSI team offers training and exercising for free, so I don't advise spending your grant money on this. But yeah, these can be requested, but you have to be very specific about what the training will accomplish. And then finally, I'll just have a quick chat about the bonus points. Okay, so with regards to this, last year it was determined that those nonprofits who have never received NSGP funding would automatically receive 15 points. And also, nonprofits located in historically disadvantaged areas can receive between 10 and 15 extra points as well. Now, you can see if you qualify for this by looking at the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. I do believe that Essex County and Union County have a high SVI ranking, so that is an extra kind of 10 points if you are in these counties. So basically, that's as much as I could fit into this time frame. But please contact me with any questions and for assistance for the upcoming NSGP, which hopefully will go live in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorette. Very informative. Thank you for that. Next up, I'd like to introduce Marco Trulli. Marco Trulli is the president and CEO of Gitotech. He's a distinguished figure in the cybersecurity realm with over 25 years of leadership and digital transformation across financial, retail, and healthcare sectors. With a robust background in cybersecurity and compliance, his career has seen him at the helm of IT strategy and infrastructure in prominent roles, including CIO, Sports Care Industry Institute, Director of Enterprise Technology for Tiffany & Company, and Director of Infrastructure for LVMH, Fashion Group of Americas. Under Mark's guidance, Gitotech has emerged as a front runner in delivering cutting-edge cybersecurity solutions, showcasing commitment to innovation and security in the digital era. Mark, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be part of it. So I'm going to share my screen here for presentation. Okay, so basically we're going to talk about cybersecurity today, go over a little bit about how to secure meetings like this, and some information, a lot of information on education. And that gets right to the point of the presentation here, is education. I use Simply Secure because a former colleague of mine who was a security expert used to promote that security is all about education, and we make it too much about technology, and he was 100% right. So we're going to talk about education and training, technology and infrastructure, policies and implementation, and incident response and recovery. So now that we're on the education side, and I have everyone's voice. I have everyone's voice now because we used generative AI to clone everyone. It goes to say that education is key. The attacks that we're seeing now coming are no longer the attacks on CEOs that are silly emails that say send me $2. We're seeing people clone voices, clone images, send out impersonation attacks asking vulnerable populations for money, and it's a challenge. And the only way we can really address that is through education. So on the topic of Zoom, I'm glad to see everyone using a webinar. We really do encourage everyone to use webinars over, traditional user-to-user communication tools like Zoom or Google Meet or Teams. Having the ability to pop into an interactive session here where multiple people can talk at the same time, it leads to what we call Zoom bombing in the Zoom world. And that happens because a lot of times with Zoom, you create a link on a website. The link doesn't change. It's got a very weak password. People get the password, they know you're using the same link, and they hop into the meeting. If it's a webinar like this, and it's just a certain amount of people that are authorized to speak, the risk of a Zoom bomb gets much, much, much less. There are ways to use Zoom and secure it, but with that, you would have to change passwords. You would be inviting people into the Zoom conference. It takes a lot of hand care and feeding to be able to do that. So whenever you can use a webinar technology, whether it's from Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I believe has webinars, it's a great way to secure your meetings, and it's great to see the Federation using the webinar. Now, simulated exercises. There's tools to simulate attacks. These are really great things for an organization to do. If you have Office 365, it includes the ability to send simulation attacks with your technology provider that can help you with this. Phishing Box is another one where we send out emails and we want people to click them. We want to teach people how to look at emails, how to look at where it's coming from, kind of a forensic analysis of the email, and to learn over time what to look at. Because, that situation where people are now having the ability to clone voices, to clone faces, to make videos, and you can imagine, a CEO or a leader in the clergy having them cloned and asking people for donations. A lot of people will fall for that. And the only way to really address that is through education. Technology, I have some vendors up here to kind of explain about what we call the technology stack. It's a multi-layer approach in technology for cybersecurity. And while I have these vendors in here, there's many vendors that provide this. So you want to have a robust IT infrastructure, a good firewall that you want to keep updated. If possible, use some of the advanced solutions in the firewall to block bad actors from getting into your network. It always starts at the edge, from the internet. Companies like Cisco, Meraki do a really good job with that. There's Cisco has solutions on top of that'll block internet traffic, bad players from coming in, encrypt any type of sensitive data. Obviously, don't send out credit card information or personally identifiable information over unencrypted email. Technologies like next generation antivirus, you want to have that in your stack. Antivirus like Sentinel-1 provides a very, very good level of protection. But like I said, it's keeping it out in the first place is good. If it hits, if a cyber attack occurs in your organization, you know, the next level would be an antivirus solution. And then access control, we see this a lot, especially in nonprofits and organizations like this. Multi-factor authentication, something besides a password, is a good thing. It could be annoying to have to, every time you log in, to have to look at an app and put a code in or receive a text code, but it does improve the security in your organization a lot, and we highly encourage that. And then policies, along with the education, is create a cybersecurity policy. You know, set expectations on what, like multi-factor in your organization. How you would recover from a cybersecurity breach if that ever happened. You know, create detailed policies that everyone knows and is made aware of, and then review those policies. Again, it's more about the education and the awareness over the technology. And then incident response. You know, what happens if you do have a breach and your data is compromised, something we never want to see. What you need to do is you need to provide an incident response plan, how you would react, and even how you would recover the data. Obviously, backups are a very good thing. What we're seeing in data recovery is even smaller organizations can benefit from disaster recovery solutions. Dado is a really good example of that. It's a device where it backs up your data or your server, and in the event of a breach, it can be recovered. So to sum it up, and it's really important to have the education to educate your users, to educate your congregants on anything that has to do with keeping secure, keeping the email secure, being aware that somebody is sending you information that may not really be that person. And with that, I put this slide up here. Anyone on the presentation or anyone on this webinar that wants to learn more about how to protect their organizations, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we could talk about it. We can help you, point you in the right direction. Also, Cisco does have free trials for people to use some of their technologies. And that's it. I just wanted to be brief to make it so that everyone stays simply secure.
Well, thank you for that, Mark. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. And I want to thank all the presenters from New Jersey Homeland Security and to Rid Zimmerman for also attending today. And thank you for your time, all of you attendees that signed on today. Thank you very much. And again, I'll have these resources sent out to you in the next day or two. Any questions, please, as always, just reach out to us, and please be safe. Thank you.